Good morning and welcome. I'm Corporal Jennifer Clark, spokesperson for the RCMP in Nova Scotia, and I'll be your moderator for this news conference. Bonjour et bienvenue. Je suis la caporale Jennifer Clark, porte-parole de la GRC en Nouvelle-Écosse, et je serai la modératrice pour cette conférence de presse. Today, Superintendent Darren Campbell, officer in charge of support services for the RCMP in Nova Scotia, will provide you with an update on the investigation as well as the order of events for April 18th and 19th. Aujourd'hui, le surintendant Darren Campbell, officier responsable des services de soutien à la GRC en Nouvelle-Écosse, vous fournira une mise à jour sur l'enquête ainsi qu'une chronologie des événements des 18 et 19 avril. A brief question and answer period will follow. Une brève période des questions et réponses suivra cette mise à jour. Superintendent Campbell, the floor is yours. Monsieur.
Good morning. As Corporal Clark has mentioned, my name is Darren Campbell and I'm a Support Services Officer for the Nova Scotia RCMP. Before I begin and provide you with information related to the incidents as they unfolded, I first want to acknowledge those who have lost their lives. 22 innocent people were killed at the hands of a gunman and 3 people were injured. To call this a tragedy would be an understatement. Some of those who lost their lives did so while trying to save others. They are true heroes. I want to express my sincere condolences to all of the families. There are 2 elements that I'd like to address before going through the incidents as they unfolded. These incidents happened in a rural area of Nova Scotia, which is Portapique in the community of Colchester County, which is in a central part of the province. This is a small community of about 100 people who live there year-round. These homes are set back from the roadways. Some are old, others are newer, and some are summer residents along the Bay of Fundy. This is a quiet and peaceful community. There are no sidewalks or street lights in that particular area. The RCMP implements a critical incident command structure when responding to complaints that may impact public safety. Highly skilled and trained officers come together as a team in order to direct emergency personnel and the multiple specialized units deployed when responding to a complaint or a critical incident. These 2 elements are very important to be aware of as I go through the timeline of these incidents. The following details that I'll be sharing with you have been put together because of the benefit of hindsight and further investigation. And knowing what happened. The police officers responding to the initial call and the subsequent calls, they did not have the benefit or the knowledge that I'm about to share with you. The initial complaint was of a shooting. To help explain the timeline, I'll be talking about 3 clusters of incidents. The first cluster was in the Portapique area on Saturday night. On Sunday, there was a second cluster of incidents in the areas of Wentworth, Glenholm, and De Burt. And then a third and final cluster of incidents were in the Shubin-Acadie area, Milford, and in Enfield.
Et maintenant en français. Avant de commencer et de vous fournir des informations relatives aux incidents au fur et à mesure de leur déroulement, je souhaite saluer la mémoire des personnes qui ont perdu la vie. 22 personnes innocentes ont été tuées par un tireur et 3 personnes ont été blessées. Cet événement va bien au-delà de la tragédie. Certaines des personnes ayant perdu la vie l'ont fait en essayant d'en sauver d'autres. Ce sont des héros. Je tiens à exprimer mes sincères condoléances à toutes les familles. J'aimerais aborder 2 éléments avant de passer en revue le fil des événements. Les incidents se sont produits dans les régions rurales de la Nouvelle-Écosse. Portapique est une collectivité du comté de Colchester, dans la partie centrale de la province. Il s'agit d'une petite collectivité où environ 100 personnes vivent à longueur d'année. Les maisons sont retraites de la route. Certaines sont vieilles, d'autres plus récentes, et certaines sont des résidences d'été longeantes de la baie de Fundy. Il s'agit d'une collectivité tranquille où il n'y a ni trottoir ni lampadaire. La GRC met en place une structure de commandement en cas d'incident critique lorsqu'elle répond à des plaintes pouvant avoir une incidence sur la sécurité publique. Des officiers hautement qualifiés et entraînés forment une équipe afin de diriger le personnel d'urgence et des multiples unités de police spécialisées qui répondent à la plainte. Il est important de garder ces deux éléments à l'esprit alors que je passe en revue le fil des événements. Les détails qui suivent ont été corrigés rétrospectivement après avoir appris ce qui s'était passé. Les policiers qui sont intervenus suite à l'appel initial au 911 et aux appels subséquents n'ont pas bénéficié des connaissances que je m'apprête à vous communiquer. La plainte initiale contenait une fusillade. Pour expliquer le fil des événements, je parlerai de 3 groupes d'incidents. Le premier groupe a lieu à Portapique samedi soir. Dimanche, un deuxième groupe d'incidents s'est déroulé à Wentworth, Glenholm et Dubert. Et puis, un troisième et dernier groupe a eu lieu à Shubenacadie, Milford et Enfield. Monsieur.
So what we've learned as part of the investigation is that on April 18th, before the first 911 call was received, there was an assault between the gunman and a person known to him. This assault occurred in the area of Portapique. The victim managed to escape from the gunman, and she hid overnight in the woods. Following this, police received its first 911 call with a report of a shooting at a home in the area. Officers arrived on scene at 10:26 in the evening, where they located a male who was leaving the area with an apparent gunshot wound. They learned that this male was shot while driving his vehicle, and the victim indicated that a vehicle had driven by him while he was driving, and that he was shot as the vehicle was passing by. He did describe this vehicle as a vehicle that looked like a police vehicle. He also indicated to the responding officers that that vehicle was driving towards the beach and that there was one way in and out of the community. And it's important to note that. The officer arranged for EHS, which is Emergency Health Services, to attend to the victim, and the victim was taken to hospital. He has survived. Several police units responded to the area, and upon arriving, they located several people who were deceased, some of which were lying in the roadway. There were also several structures that were already fully engulfed in flames. In total, there were over 7 locations where people were found deceased. Many of the deceased were discovered while responding members were checking homes for victims and or for suspects. At this time, the police began looking at a number of possible suspects as a result of the information that they were receiving. While the situation was unfolding, the Critical Incident Program was engaged and was staging to take control of the critical incident. During this point, perimeters were established, specialized units responded, which included police dog services, emergency response team members, and requests for air support helicopter. There was also explosive disposal unit, crisis negotiators, and emergency medical response teams that were part of the critical incident package. Within a very short period of time, we also engaged specialized units and resources from a neighboring division in New Brunswick. Over their lengthy course of time, first responders engaged in clearing residences, searched for suspects, provided life-saving measures to victims. Telecommunication operators remained on the line with witnesses in the immediate area for extended periods of time. Fairly early into our involvement, we learned of a possible suspect and learned the individual lived in a home within that same community in Portapique. The possible suspect's home and garages I can confirm were fully engulfed in flames as well. 2 police package Ford vehicles, as well as a third vehicle, was also burning on that potential suspect's property. We also learned that the gunman was in possession of a pistol and long-barreled weapons. We learned that he was also known to own several vehicles that looked like police vehicles. Our efforts to locate the suspect continued throughout the night. It was only after 6:30 in the morning or daybreak when a victim emerged from hiding after she had called 911. Our officers responded, and it was at that time that through that significant key witness, we confirmed more details about Gabriel Wortman. This included the fact that he was in possession of a fully marked and equipped replica RCMP vehicle and was wearing a police uniform. We also learned that he was in possession of several firearms that included pistols and long-barreled weapons. It was at that time that the police issued a BOLO, which is a be on the lookout for. That's a bulletin which included a description of the suspect and the vehicle to all police agencies in Nova Scotia. We maintained containment of the scene and continued to search for the suspect. And what I'll do is I'll just turn to the map, and you can see on the map the pinpointed areas are residences of some of our victims. The total number of victims that we've accounted for in that particular area are 13 deceased. And what you can't see on that map as well, you can see Highway 2 just to the north, but there's Portapique Beach Road, and that's the one main entry point into the Portapique Beach area. It's an approximately 2 square mile area. It's heavily wooded, and the roads are gravel-based roads.
Ce que nous avons appris dans le cadre de l'enquête, c'est que le 18 avril, avant le premier appel, une agression a eu lieu entre le tireur et une personne qu'il connaissait à Portapique. La victime a réussi à s'échapper du tireur et s'est cachée dans les bois pendant la nuit. Suite à cela, la police a reçu le premier appel de 911 dans lequel on rapportait des coups de feu dans un domicile de Portapique. Les agents sont arrivés à 22h26 et ont trouvé un homme qui quittait la zone avec une blessure par balle apparente. Ils ont appris que cet homme avait été visé alors qu'il conduisait son véhicule. La victime a indiqué qu'un véhicule l'avait croisé alors qu'il conduisait et que le coup de feu provenait de ce véhicule. L'agent a pris des dispositions pour que le service d'urgence de santé s'occupe de la victime, laquelle a été transportée à l'hôpital par ses services. Plusieurs de policiers sont intervenus dans cette zone et à leur arrivée, elles ont trouvé plusieurs personnes mortes, gisant sur la chaussée et plusieurs structures déjà en feu. Au total, il y a plus de 7 endroits où des personnes ont été retrouvées mortes. Beaucoup de corps ont été découverts alors que les intervenants fouillaient les maisons pour trouver des victimes ou des suspects. À ce moment-là, la police a commencé à envisager un certain nombre de suspects potentiels à la suite des informations qu'ils recevaient. Alors que les événements s'enchaînent, le programme des incidents critiques a été contacté et mis sur pied pour prendre le contrôle de cette situation critique. À ce stade, des périmètres ont été établis, des unités spécialisées sont intervenues, une équipe d'intervention d'urgence utilisant des chiens policiers a été appelée, un hélicoptère du ministère des Terres et Forêts a été dépêché. Se sont ajoutés le GEE, des négociateurs, le JIMU et des négociateurs en situation de crise. En très peu de temps, nous avons mobilisé des unités et des réseaux spécialisés de la division J en Nouveau-Brunswick. Sur une période longue, Les premiers intervenants se sont efforcés de vérifier chaque résidence, de rechercher des suspects et de prendre des mesures pour sauver des vies. Les agents de télécommunication sont restés en ligne avec des témoins dans la région immédiate. Assez tôt d'entre notre intervention, nous avons été mis au courant de l'identité d'un suspect et avons appris qu'il vivait dans une maison de la collectivité de Portapique. À notre arrivée, la maison et les garages du suspect présumé étaient entièrement dévorés par les flammes et 2 véhicules de police, ainsi qu'un 3e véhicule était également en feu sur la propriété. Nous avons appris que le tireur était en possession d'un pistolet et d'armes à canon long. Nous avons aussi appris qu'il possédait plusieurs véhicules semblables à ceux de la police. Nos efforts pour retrouver le suspect se sont poursuivis toute la nuit. Après 6h30 au lever du jour, une victime est sortie de sa cachette après avoir appelé le 911. Nos agents se sont présentés sur place et c'est à ce moment-là que, grâce à un témoin important, nous avons appris plus de détails au sujet de Gabriel Wortman. Nous avons notamment appris qu'il possédait une réplique de véhicule de la police marqué à l'effigie de la police, possédant tout l'équipement nécessaire et il portait un uniforme de police. Il était en possession de plusieurs armes à feu, dont le pistolet et des armes d'épaule. À ce moment-là, nous avons diffusé un avis de surveillant, ADS, un bulletin comprenant une description du suspect et du véhicule, à tous les policiers de la Nouvelle-Écosse. Nous avons maintenu le confinement de la scène et poursuivi la recherche du suspect. Au map, on a plusieurs points et c'est jusqu'à 2 km carrés. Et sur ces beaucoup de points, on a trouvé 13 personnes mortes.
So I get you to advance to the next map, please. So it was more than 12 hours after our initial arrival in the Portapique area that we began receiving a second series of 911 calls. That was in an area which was more than 60 kilometers away from the Portapique area. Our investigation has revealed that the gunman attended a residence on Hunter Road in the Glenholm area. At that location, the gunman killed 2 men and 1 woman, and he set the residence on fire. At least 2 of the victims were known to the gunman. Our investigation has uncovered that the gunman then traveled to a residence on Highway 4 in the Glenholm area. He had knocked on the door and he had woken the occupants. He was known to the residents, and they identified him to a 911 call taker. And they also advised that he was driving a police vehicle and carrying a long-barreled weapon. They did not answer the door, and the gunman left. The gunman continued southbound on Highway 4 from Glenholm to the Wentworth area. Along the way, he encountered a woman who was out walking, and he shot the woman at the roadside. He continued south towards DeBert. At that point, he encountered 2 other individuals who happened to be driving their vehicles at that time. A witness described that the suspect had pulled over one of the vehicles and had shot one of the drivers. He continued driving down that same road, Highway 4, and he encountered a second vehicle, and he shot and killed that victim at that location. During this second series of events, from the timing of the first call on Hunty Road to the last incident was about a distance of 44 kilometers. You can see on the map, unfortunately, that second 911 call is not on the screen. However, you can see some timings of the pinpoint of the map. The lower left corner, you can see the Portapique area. The first incident that we believe that the gunman had attended to was that pin at the top of the map, which is in the Wentworth area. That's where he killed the two males, the male and two males and one female. He then proceeded over to the Glenholm area, which is just to the left of that, where that 911 call came in, and he departed that residence. Shortly after that, 9:35, there was a 911 call for the female walker as the gunman proceeded down to the Debert area by 10:08.
Merci. Plus de 12 heures après notre arrivée à Portapique, le service 911 a commencé à recevoir une deuxième série d'appels venant d'un secteur situé à plus de 60 km de Portapique. Notre enquête a révélé que le tireur s'était rendu à une résidence du chemin Hunter à Glenholm. À cet endroit, le tireur a abattu 2 hommes et une femme, puis il a mis le feu à la maison. Le tireur connaissait au moins 2 de ses victimes. Il s'est ensuite rendu dans une résidence de la route 4 à Glenholm. Il a cogné à la porte et réveillé les résidents. Ceux-ci le connaissent. Ils ont donné son identité au téléphoniste de 911 et il leur ont dit qu'il se déplaçait au volant d'un véhicule de police et qu'il avait une arme d'épaule avec lui. Ils ne lui ont pas ouvert la porte et le tireur est parti. Le tireur a poursuivi son chemin sur la route 4 en direction sud de Glenholm à Wentworth. Sur sa route, il a rencontré une femme qui marchait et il l'a abattue sur le bord de la route. Il a ensuite continué son chemin vers Debert, en Nouvelle-Écosse, en direction sud. C'est à ce moment-là qu'il a rencontré 2 véhicules. Selon un témoin, le tireur a intercepté un des véhicules et tiré sur une des personnes qui y prenaient place. Plus loin, il a rencontré un deuxième véhicule et tué la conductrice. Cette deuxième série d'incidents, à partir du moment où le premier appel est arrivé, du chemin Hunter au dernier incident, couvre une distance d'environ 44 km. Au map, on peut voir Portapique, c'est sur le fond du map, et à l'eau, il représente Hunter Road. Et entre le haut et le fond, c'est environ 44 km. How many? Yeah. Do we say that? No. No. OK. Merci.
Thank you. So during that period of time, it was both Constable Chad Morrison and Constable Heidi Stevenson. They were on shift and working out of the RCMP Enfield detachment on the morning of April 19th. Both were communicating on their police radios with each other, and they had arranged to make a meet. Constable Morrison was waiting for Constable Stevenson at Highway 2 and Highway 224. What appeared to be a marked police vehicle then approached Constable Morrison. As they had prearranged to meet at that location, Constable Morrison thought that the vehicle was Constable Stevenson. The approaching police vehicle was actually driven by the gunman. The gunman pulled up beside Constable Morrison and immediately opened fire. Constable Morrison received several gunshot wounds, and he began to retreat from the area, driving his vehicle away from the scene. He notified other officers and dispatch that he had been shot and that he was en route to an EHS station for emergency medical attention. During that time, Constable Heidi Stevenson was nearby, believed to be driving northbound on Highway 2, while the gunman was traveling southbound on Highway 2 at that time. At that point, both vehicles collided head-on. Constable Stevenson engaged the gunman. The gunman took Constable Stevenson's life. He also took Constable Stevenson's issued sidearm and her magazines. A passerby had stopped and was fatally shot by the gunman. The gunman set both Constable Stevenson's vehicle and the replica police vehicle on fire. He left the scene driving south on Highway 224 in the passerby's vehicle, which was described as a silver SUV. The gunman traveled south on Highway 224 for a very short distance, where he entered the home on the east side of Highway 224. That home happened to be the home of a woman known to the gunman. The gunman shot and killed that female resident. The gunman then removed the police clothing that he was wearing at the time and transferred his weapons to the female victim's vehicle, which was a red Mazda 3. The gunman traveled south on Highway 224, coming to the big stop Irving in Enfield. While he's at the gas pumps, one of our tactical resources came to the gas station to refuel their vehicle. When the officer exited the vehicle, there was an encounter, and the gunman was shot and killed by police at 11:26 in the morning. The distance that the gunman had traveled from the first shooting of Constable Morrison to the encounter with police at the big stop was approximately 23 kilometers. You can see on the map, the first pin is the area where Constable Morrison was parked just on the other side of the river, and he and Constable Stevenson had been communicating, and they were aware that we were looking for a suspect in a replica police vehicle. They had decided to meet, and it's not uncommon for police officers to meet when they drive in with their vehicles. And it was that replica vehicle that Constable Morrison initially believed to be Constable Stevenson, as they had previously arranged to meet at that location. Constable Morrison traveled north from that location, and when he was radioing to officers and dispatch, it was Constable Stevenson that was approaching the scene as well, as the suspect was fleeing towards her. You can see the distance that was traveled from those two scenes. The two officer-involved shootings are at that first point. The second shooting of the female victim, where there was the change of vehicles, was fairly close. And then the last point is at the Enfield Irving Big Stop, where the encounter occurred between the gunman and our officers.
Les gendarmes Morrison et Stevenson s'étaient entendus pour se rejoindre. Chad attendait Heidi à l'intersection des routes 2 et 224. Ce qui semblait être un véhicule identifié de la GRC s'est approché du gendarme Morrison, et celui-ci a pensé que c'était celui de la gendarme Stevenson, puisqu'il s'était entendu pour se rejoindre à cet endroit. En réalité, le tireur était au volant du véhicule. Il s'est rangé à côté de celui du gendarme Morrison et a immédiatement ouvert le feu. Le gendarme Morrison, qui a subi de nombreuses blessures par balle, s'est sauvé de l'endroit au volant de son véhicule. Il a informé les autres agents et les répartiteurs qu'il est blessé et qu'il se rendait au service d'urgence pour recevoir des soins médicaux d'urgence. Pendant ce temps, la gendarme Heidi Stevenson était près du secteur. Nous croyons que les deux véhicules sont entrés en collision frontale sur la route 2, alors que la gendarme se dirigeait vers le nord et que le tireur se dirigeait vers le sud. Une confrontation a eu lieu entre le gendarme Heidi Stevenson et le tireur. Celui-ci a tué la gendarme, puis il a pris son fusil et ses chargeurs. Un passant s'est arrêté sur les yeux et le tireur l'a abattu. Le tireur a mis le feu au véhicule de la gendarme Stevenson et à sa propre réplique du véhicule de la police. Il a ensuite pris le véhicule du passant, décrit comme étant une VUS argent, pour se diriger vers le sud sur la route 224. Le tireur a parcouru une courte distance vers le sud sur la route 224 jusqu'à une résidence située sur le côté de cette route. La résidence appartenait à une femme qu'il connaissait. il l'a abattu. Le tireur a ensuite enlevé l'uniforme de police qu'il portait et transféré ses armes dans la voiture de la victime, une Mazda 3 rouge. Il a pris la route de 2-4 vers le sud et s'est arrêté au Big Stop Irving à Enfield. Pendant qu'il était à la pompe, un de nos ressources tactiques s'est aussi arrêté à la station-service pour faire le plein. En sortant du véhicule, il y a eu une altercation entre l'agent et le tireur. Celui-ci a été abattu par la police à 11h26. Entre le moment où le tireur a fait feu sur le gendarme Stevenson et celui où il a été abattu par la police au Big Stop, le tireur a parcouru environ 23 km. Notre enquête sur ces incidents horribles a été compliquée par le fait que les situations des groupes d'incidents critiques évoluaient très rapidement. La GRC de la Nouvelle-Écosse demande à toute personne qui a de l'information si l'un ou l'autre de ces incidents de communiquer avec elle. Nous sommes à la recherche de photos, de vidéos ou de tout autre élément qui pourrait nous aider. Tous les renseignements sont importants, aussi insignifiants qu'ils puissent paraître. Si vous avez de l'information à ce sujet, nous aimerions l'avoir. Toute personne qui a de l'information est priée d'appeler la ligne d'information de la GRC au 1-902-720-5959. Nous avons déjà reçu de nombreux appels et nous remercions le public de communiquer avec nous. Sur le map, on a l'endroit où, à l'autre, où le tireur a rencontré gendarme Morrison, et puis l'endroit où le tireur a rencontré le gendarme Stevenson, et puis, juste un petit peu bas, la femme dans le véhicule en argent. C'est juste 23 km du moment où il a rencontré gendarme Morrison, à la fin, où il a rencontré les gendarmes aux stations-service. Merci.
So the situations within the cluster of critical incidents were rapidly evolving, which increased the complexity of this investigation of these horrific incidents. The Nova Scotia RCMP continue to ask for anyone who has information about any of these incidents to contact us, please. We are looking for photos, videos, and any other material that may help. No piece of information is too small. And if you have information, we need to hear from you. We ask those with information to call the RCMP tip line at 1-902-720-5959. We've already received many tips, and we're very thankful to the public for taking the time to contact us. Okay.
Okay, we will now proceed with a question period. We ask that you limit yourself to one question and one follow-up, please. Nous procéderons maintenant à la période de questions. Nous vous demandons de vous en tenir à une question et une autre de précision. We will now go to the phone lines for questions. Operator, go ahead, please. Nous allons maintenant prendre les questions des journalistes qui sont en ligne.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. We will now take questions from the telephone lines. Nous allons maintenant passer à la période de questions. If you have a question and you're using a speakerphone, please lift your handset before making a selection. Si un téléphone main libre, veuillez s'il vous plaît soulever le combiné avant d'effectuer votre sélection. If you have a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. Si vous désirez poser une question, veuillez s'il vous plaît appuyer sur les touches étoile 1 de votre téléphone à clavier. If at any time you wish to cancel your question, please press the pound sign. Vous pouvez à tout moment annuler votre question en appuyant sur le dièse. Please press *1 at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. There will be a brief pause while the participants register for questions. Thank you for your patience. Merci de votre patience. The first question is from Steve Shearer from Reuters. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Hello. Yes. Thank you for this detailed press conference. I had a question about the way it started. You said that the whole thing had sort of started. The whole rampage had started after the gunman had assaulted someone known to him, who then escaped. And I was wondering, could you tell me, is that someone, a girlfriend or a wife or something like that? And is that the same person that then came out of the woods at 6:30 in the morning the next day and gave you the key information?
Yes, thanks for your question. I can confirm that the individual is a female, and that female was in a relationship over a course of period of time with the gunman. That female did escape, and that female, as I indicated, had hid in the woods. And that was the same individual that had key information for us that was necessary for us to understand more about Mr. Wortman and what he was currently in possession of at that time.
Okay, as a follow-up, thank you. As a follow-up, my question is this, I don't want you to speculate, but is there the sense that this assault and the escape of his girlfriend was the trigger that set off this terrible series of events?
So obviously, as part of the investigation, that is a consideration that we have. That could have been a catalyst to this. However, we're open to all possibilities, and we're not excluding the possibility that there was any premeditated planning also involved. At the same time, it was a significant incident. It was a significant assault, and this individual female did manage to escape, and that could very well have been the catalyst to start the chain of events. However, we're not going to discount any possibility of any pre-planning at this time.
Thank you. Merci. The next question, la prochaine question is from Todd Battis, CTV News. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Good morning, Superintendent. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask a question regarding the shooting at the fire hall in Onslow. We know that Serious Incident Response Team is looking into that. We understand it was 2 RCMP officers, and I'm wondering if you can confirm that and tell us who the target was that they were shooting at.
Okay. So thanks for mentioning that incident is currently being investigated by an independent body, which is the Special Investigation Response Team. What I can do is I can provide you with some general comments, obviously things that are known to us and that caused us to engage CERT in taking care of that particular investigation. What I think is maybe helpful is to put into context the timing of that incident. And of course, the officers on the road knew that we were looking for a marked police vehicle. And it was 2 of our other officers that were involved in that incident. And it also involved a marked vehicle. But I can't go any further than that as it's currently under investigation.
As a follow-up, if I may, have the 2 officers been reprimanded at all? Is there any internal investigation within the RCMP in that regard?
So in the course of any of those types of referrals to CERT, when there's a discharge of firearm, there's always a review, and there's always a review of the status of those officers. I know that this entire incident obviously is particularly difficult for every Nova Scotian, certainly horrific for the families, and it's also a traumatic incident for all of the first responders. And I'm not just talking about the police officers, I'm talking about the ambulance attendants and the firefighters, our dispatchers, our officers, and also the public as well.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Elizabeth McSheffrey, Global Halifax. La prochaine question d'Elizabeth McSheffrey. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Hi there. I'm wondering at this point what we still don't know about the investigation. It's a very detailed timeline, but what bits of information are you still looking for?
Well, with any type of critical incident or homicide investigation, clearly we want to be able to understand everything that we can possibly understand about the individual responsible. We also want to ensure that there was no other involvement or knowledge of any other person that might have contributed or led to this horrific series of events. So that is all happening in the background right now. We are building a complete timeline because we need to know and understand the exact areas that the gunman had taken. There could be evidence out there in those places, so we're retracing all of his steps, and we're working backwards from that as well. So, you know, it's a very fluid investigation. It is complicated. I'm sure that everyone can appreciate that any singular homicide investigation is complicated. This is a series of 22 homicides over more than 16 locations. So it's very complex. It does take time, and we do need to be able to confirm all of the information before we receive that information, because we certainly don't want to influence any potential witnesses who we have yet to interview.
And just a follow-up, if I may, there's a significant timeline gap in between the first response in Portapique at 10:26 in the morning and the next pins that we have the next morning at 9:35 on those maps. What can you fill in the blanks a little bit between that significant timeline gap? What happened overnight?
Yeah, what I can tell you is that the critical incident program was fully, obviously, engaged at that time. And all of the officers involved in that initial response within the Portapique area, they were containing that area. They were also checking for residents, and we were removing residents from the scene. We were building up information on any possible suspect. And of course, we have to be alive to the reality that there could be more than one. So all that was happening in the background. And, you know, I can sure that everyone can imagine what that scene would have looked like. You know, multiple victims, multiple structure fires. We were containing that area, and we were checking for any survivors. We were still checking for any witnesses. We were looking for the suspect. We were engaged in all of those. So that was fully active in that area at the time. And of course, as you mentioned, there's this significant gap in time before we have another series of events. Now, obviously, and I don't like to make assumptions, but the suspect had obviously moved beyond the perimeter. Our investigation is ongoing, and we've uncovered some information to suggest that there was a vehicle, and this was much after the fact, that was seen leaving through a field, driving through a field. At this point, we are assuming, and I don't like to assume, but we are assuming that could very well have been the suspect that was leaving the area, but that information, as I understand it, was not known at the time. And then what the suspect did during that period of time before the second cluster of incidents, we do not know at this point. But that's why we are appealing to the public, because somebody may know something. Somebody may have seen something, and we're collecting all the evidence and video along the way in order to retrace the steps.
Thank you. Merci. The next question, la prochaine question is from Heidi Petrosik, CTV News Atlantic. Please go ahead, your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Thank you. Superintendent, wondering how much of a role the suspect having a police or a mock police vehicle in Portapique would have played in him being able to get through the perimeter that had been secured, or would he have left the area before that perimeter was secured?
Thanks for your question. It is possible that the suspect was able to leave the area before the initial response. And I can imagine, I don't think it's difficult for non-police personnel or the public to understand that it would obviously complicate things. You know, I've been a police officer for almost 30 years now, and I can't imagine any more horrific set of circumstances when you're trying to search for someone that looks like you. The dangers that causes, the complications that causes. That obviously was an advantage that the suspect had on the police, that he had on the public, that he had on every person that he encountered through the course of his rampage.
I do have a follow-up.
Sure.
I'm wondering, you have referred to people who have obviously survived their encounter. You mentioned the woman who was in a relationship, the gentleman who was driving. How much more can you say about, especially in the incident in Portapique, how many people actually came out of that alive?
I don't have that number for you. I mean, there's certainly other residents that did survive. The only numbers that I have for you are those that were injured in the Portapique area. And in that case, there were 2 that were provided medical treatment. There could be more. I don't have that information available to me. And then, of course, the other injured individual was Constable Morrison.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, the next question is from Christopher Nardi, National Post. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm here this time. I wanted to ask about the use of the police cruiser. Did the killer have access to a cop radio or radio frequencies? Was he aware of where your operations were undergoing and where you were possibly looking for him?
To the best of my knowledge, the suspect did not. Obviously, that was a concern after the incident with Constable Stevenson. But I know that our radio channels are encrypted here in Nova Scotia. So his ability to actually have some form of a radio and monitor our communications, I don't believe that that was an advantage that he would have been given. However, police vehicles are fairly noticeable, even from a distance. So he did have that advantage of knowing at times where the police were. And through the course of the investigation, we are aware through some of the video evidence that we've collected that he did come fairly close to some of our officers and did not engage them.
And as a follow-up, I wanted just to make sure that I understood. After the initial incidents, I understand that police went back to his house to find, or his cottage to find that it was on fire. And from what I understand on that site, you found 2 additional mock police cars that were burning. So he had 3 in total. What other police potential equipment did you find at his home?
Well, I'll answer the question first in relation to the police vehicles, and that's an important point, actually. When we were doing a workup of all possible suspects, obviously the gunman came up as one of them, and we were aware that he did have access to police-looking vehicles. And through that, in the background of all of the critical incident response, there are police personnel that are actually doing the background checks. And we did learn that there were 3 plated vehicles that were Ford Taurus vehicles that were determined to be probably former police vehicles. And those 3 plated vehicles, what that set off was a chain of inquiry to determine the locations of those vehicles. We knew that the suspect also had a residence in the Halifax Regional Municipality, and we sent officers to that area as well to confirm that there was 1 of those Ford Tauruses at that location, and that there were 2 that were burning at the residence in the suspect's residence in the Portapique area. So at that point in time, we knew that we had accounted for 3 of the plated vehicles. We weren't aware at that particular time, it became known to us later, that he had a 4th registered vehicle, and that was actually the one, there was no plate attached to that, and that was the vehicle that he was using during his rampage. And I know you had a second point to that question, and I apologize. I started speaking first about the police vehicles. If you could go with that second point for me, please.
He has been removed from the queue. I'm sorry, sir.
Okay. My apologies.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Tom Bateman, Times and Transcript. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Yeah, good morning. I actually have a similar question about the RCMP vehicles. What awareness does the RCMP have about how the shooter came to acquire and came to furnish that vehicle in the way he did, the one that he used? You said it wasn't registered, or it wasn't plated. What have you learned about that situation?
So our investigators are tracking down every possible lead in terms of determining the origins of these vehicles, any of the equipment that he may have had access to that looked like RCMP uniforms as well. In terms of, how could someone get access to, there's many ways that individuals can access former law enforcement or emergency services vehicles. I'm sure that many people have seen that there are Ford Taurus vehicles that are operated by emergency health services, fire departments as well. So they are what would be called a police package radio. I'm sure that everyone's ridden in a cab that was once a police car. So these vehicles, once they are out of service, they are often sold within, if it's federal, it would be Crown assets. If it is in a municipality, I'm sure that they have mechanisms to dispose of that equipment as well. What I can tell you is that the investigation, we're tracing down how he could have potentially received any equipment. I can confirm that we have pinpointed where he had obtained the light bar for the vehicle. We're working through that part of the investigation now. And I can also confirm it's our belief that we found a decal manufacturer who provided the decal sheeting. We just haven't yet determined exactly where he was able to get those police package decals printed.
Thank you. And to follow up, you mentioned in relation to his uniform, that was an authentic uniform. Where did he get that? And are any of these components you mentioned under any form of criminal investigation or other investigation? Was there wrongdoing, I guess, in his acquisition of these things?
Well, of course, we're certainly looking at that aspect. That's an important aspect of the investigation, and that continues to this time. What I can say is that witnesses have since come forward since the critical incident and the horrific events that unfolded, and they've indicated to the police and provided information that they had seen the suspect with the vehicles. They had seen the suspect with the marked police vehicle well before this, and that they had seen the suspect with several different types of police agency uniforms. Unfortunately, the suspect's residence in the Portapique area is completely destroyed by fire, so some of those items we're never going to be able to recover. But what I can tell you, as I mentioned when I was providing the overview of the timeline, is that the suspect did shed the uniform that he had on at the time, and that was at the shooting that occurred on Highway 224 just before the encounter with police at the Big Stop. We have recovered those pieces, and some of those pieces, I can tell you, are what appear to be discarded or old pieces of police uniform, RCMP uniform, and also a piece of uniform from another agency as well.
Thank you. Merci. The next question, la prochaine question is from Victoria Walton, the Coast. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Hi there. Thank you so much. My question is in relation to the typical amount of RCMP officers who are working in the Portapique area. I was wondering how many usually are on duty on a Saturday night or Sunday morning, and at what time backup was called in, and talking about the number of officers who were on duty.
Okay, yeah, my apologies. I don't have that information available to me of what we would normally have. And also, it's important that information we normally don't disclose because we don't necessarily want to notify individuals who might be thinking of committing crimes as to where our resources are. But what I can tell you is that I've had an opportunity to look through the dispatch sheets, and there are hundreds of pages of them during the course of the original response in Portapique. And within a very short period of time, my count was there were over 25 separate units that had responded to that area.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, the next question is from Emily Barron-Calda from Maclean's. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Hi, thank you so much. You have mentioned the benefit of hindsight. Looking back now, is there a feeling that it was a mistake not to utilize an EMO message earlier in the night or morning, or not to utilize a better way of notifying the public?
So, a full review is obviously done after every critical incident, and that review will take place. However, I've had conversations with the Critical Incident Command team that was on the ground at that time. And, you have to appreciate that they believed that they had that area contained. They believed that they, would more than likely have that suspect either or one of a few possibilities. Suspect was still in the area, the suspect had escaped, or the suspect was in one of his burning residences and actually committed suicide. As I mentioned earlier, we had believed that he had access to 3 police vehicles, and there were 2 vehicles burning, police-style vehicles burning on his property, and there was a 3rd police vehicle that was located at his residence in the Halifax Regional Municipality. So through my conversations with Critical Incident Command, obviously it's fluid, it's dynamic, it's a situation that's evolving, and the Critical Incident Commander considers all opportunities available to them. But at that time, we had a localized incident. As I mentioned earlier, it's essentially it's 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, so a 4 square kilometer radius that was heavily locked down with a significant number of resources. So at that particular time, I can't speak for the Critical Incident Commander, but that was not a consideration, I understand, at that particular time.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up for that, I think many people likely understand the fluid nature of this investigation and how things were moving so quickly overnight. But now, looking back, many family members, friends of victims are lamenting the fact that they didn't know what was going on, and there's some criticism there. Is there a feeling that the RCMP may need to rebuild a bit of public trust?
Well, public trust is a cornerstone of our ability to do our job. And the RCMP needs that trust. And we do a lot of work to build that trust. So I can certainly understand and I empathize and I hear the families of those victims. We hear them full force. They have every right to ask those questions. They have every right to be angry. Public trust, as I said, is so important, and it's not something that it's gained easily. It takes a lot of work, and it's lost very easily. And I can say from my experience in this organization, the people that I have had the pleasure of serving with, that element of trust and respect to the public is alive in so many of our employees at every category and every level. And we do enjoy that level of trust by many, but we understand why those questions are being asked. And we are always looking to do better.
Thank you. Merci. The prochaine question. La prochaine question est de Maurice Reese from the Shoreline. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity and the details that you've been providing. Understand, because there was a media report published this morning, that the assailant had a hit list, and the person who was in the media report said he was told by the RCMP that he was 7th or 8th on the list. Can you confirm there was a list and how many people were on that list?
So I can confirm to this point in the investigation we have not uncovered a list. But maybe what I can do is provide you with a little more context to understand why some individuals may be saying that. As I mentioned earlier, while the situation in Portapique continued to unfold, there was a lot of investigative work that was going on behind the scenes, not just those that were at the Portapique area. And one of the things that while we were trying to confirm the location of that third police vehicle. We were also, and it was at that time when that critical witness came forward with critical information for us, we identified other family members who could potentially be at risk. So we were contacting individuals who we believed could have been on a list or were potentially at risk. We were contacting them, we were bringing them to safety, and we were interviewing them at that time. Another issue that could play into the belief that there was a list is that, as I mentioned earlier, as I was going through the second cluster of incidents, that 911 call in the Glenholm area where the gunman had attended, he had just finished killing 3 individuals and setting fire to their home in the Hunter Road area where he attended in the police vehicle. Those individuals knew the gunman. I can't really imagine, I'm not in the mind of the gunman, but I can't necessarily imagine why he would have went there to see those individuals. It's very, very likely that maybe they were also people that he might have had an issue with. But again, I don't want to speculate, but to me that seems to stand out, and it could be a contributing factor to people talking about this list.
Just as a comeback, the person that was identified said that he was at odds with them because he had refused to sell him a police vehicle in the past, and there was another incident whereby he apparently visited somebody because they had a dispute over an invoice for construction work that was done.
Yeah, so you make more of a comment than a question, but what I'll say to that is that we have interviewed several individuals or associates, people that had come in contact with the gunman, not during this incident, but in the past. And there seems to be a trail of individuals who had had problems with Mr. Wortman. So naturally, we would be talking to those individuals. We would want to understand the essence or the origins of those problems and what they might have known about him. And of course, the list, when we conduct these investigations, we task out subjects to interview. So there is an interview list, and these are individuals. So of course, as we carry through an investigation, you conduct one interview, and that interview may identify several other individuals who need to speak to as well. So we do create lists of individuals that we are required to contact and determine what it is that they may or may not know.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question. The next question is from Ross Lord, Global National TV. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte. Ross Lord, your line is open.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask you, what parts of the investigation is his partner helping you with now, and how close are you to determining his motive?
Well, as I mentioned, that former partner is a critical witness. That witness is an individual that obviously we have spent a considerable amount of time with, and I would imagine we will spend more time in the future with her. She is being cooperative with us. She is currently recovering, and with that, it limits the amount of time that we can spend with her. But of course, she is assisting us, and she is identifying other avenues of investigation that we need to pursue. I don't want to speculate about motives. What I would say is that any crime against another person, normal people have a very difficult time understanding it because we wouldn't do such a thing. And trying to understand the mindset of an individual is sometimes a very difficult thing. We'll do everything that we can to understand that, but we are in the process of trying to unpack that, and that will continue for what I would imagine a very long time.
Okay, I have a follow-up, which is related to that. Actually, you've had some time to talk about this with his partner. Are you any closer to understanding that, or is it still something that you have no idea?
Well, there's a number of theories, and of course, sometimes investigations, I wouldn't say they're driven by evidence, but they're guided sometimes by theories. So there are theories, and there's more than one theory, and we're conducting a systematic investigation into all of those theories. And it's our hope that we are able to uncover the true motives. But again, there are times when, unfortunately, we don't have the opportunity to sit down with this individual and ask him those questions. Even then, when we have those opportunities, there are individuals that never provide that information to us.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, the next question is from Paul Withers, CBC News, Halifax. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Good afternoon, Superintendent. What can you tell us about the weapons that the gunman had? How were they obtained? And did he use any explosives to burn down the houses?
So what I can tell you about the weapons, obviously that's a critical piece of the investigation and understanding exactly how the individual came into possession of those weapons and when he came into possession of those weapons. As I indicated in the narrative of the clusters of incidents, we do know through witness information that the suspect did use a handgun. The shooter also used long guns. What I can tell you about the weapons is that at this point in time, we've been able to trace one of those weapons back to Canada, and the remaining weapons that have been recovered, it's believed that they were obtained in the United States.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up. Do you know how many weapons in total he had, and what can you tell us more about how he got them from the U.S. into Canada?
Well, the second part of your question is obviously part of an active investigation, so I'm not in a position to speak to that at this time. But it is a very important piece of our global investigation. In terms of numbers of weapons, some of the witnesses that we've interviewed since that time have told us about a significant number of weapons. However, our challenge is that the suspect's residence in Portapique has been completely burned to the ground. So our ability to recover certain evidence is limited. And what I would add to that as well is that these weren't structure fires that were put out quickly. These are structure fires that completely burned to the ground with an intense amount of heat. But again, as I mentioned, in terms of the origins of the weapons, who may have provided those weapons, how he obtained them, that's all subject to the ongoing investigation right now.
We'll just take one last question. Une dernière question, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, merci, Ms. Clark. The last question, la dernière question is from Thomas Daigle, CBC National News. From Thomas Daigle, CBC National News. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Thank you. It became clear on Saturday night that the suspect may be driving a mock police car. Why wait 11, perhaps 12 hours to warn the public of that? Couldn't that have saved lives?
Well, I mean, again, you're asking me to provide a crystal ball answer to that question. As I mentioned before, the critical piece of the information, including the photograph of the vehicle and particular markings like the call sign on the vehicle, those details did not emerge. And the fact that there was this fourth unplated vehicle didn't emerge until the early morning hours of the 19th when that critical witness emerged from the woods. And it was at that time as well that we had accounted for the 3 vehicles that we believed that the suspect actually possessed. So I can from a critical incident standpoint, I know that those were factors that were considered by the critical incident commander as they were going through any kind of public notification potential, is at that time, they believed that they had accounted for the 3 police vehicles that were accessible to the gunman.
A former employer of the suspect told us that Wortman had said last year that he had informed police or a police officer that he had a real-looking, mocked-up police vehicle and that he was told to keep it on a trailer off the road. Can you tell us what information the RCMP had and how the RCMP handled the information once they initially found out that this individual may have a real-looking RCMP car?
So I don't have an answer to that question, but I'll make a comment. And I haven't heard that. So if this individual exists, I'm going to ask them to come forward. I'm going to ask them to provide that information to us.
This concludes our press conference. Ceci conclut la conférence de presse. Merci pour votre présence. Thank you for attending.